Hi there, it's Zane. We're here to talk about COVID and vitamin D. In the last video, I said I was going to be uploading some short videos that took a closer look at some of the other therapies that we talked about in an earlier video. And in my attempts to do that, had some technical difficulties with uploading them to YouTube. So that's why it's been so long since the last one. So I hope that this one will actually work and get through the YouTube processing algorithms. So before we get into that, I will mention, I'll put a link in the description back to the prior video. That is a summary video of the original 2-hour presentation on COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, and adjunct therapies for prevention, and also adjunct therapies for phase 1 infection of SARS-CoV-2. You can find that link in the description if you want to look deeper into what we're going to be talking about. One of the things we did talk about in that video was vitamin D and its association with a shorter course of illness and a lower severity of illness. And we were looking at the things that were effective for optimizing your immune system, and many of those specifically in the case, all of them in the context of COVID, but not all the research was done exactly in regards to COVID, but much of it was. And one of the particular studies with vitamin D was done with SARS-CoV-2 infections with COVID-19. So we're here to look at that today. I will put the link in the description, like I mentioned. And the thing that we'll just briefly touch on today in regards to vitamin D, after we look at the study one more time, is mainly some of the mechanisms for getting the amount of vitamin D that you need. You can look up the amounts, recommended daily values, all that. That stuff's easy to find out. I'm not going to spend time on that, but we will look at the study right here. So this was one of the most helpful ones, I would say, one of the most overlooked ones. The mortality risk from COVID-19 correlates inversely with vitamin D status. So as your vitamin D status or vitamin D level is higher, the mortality risk is lower. Mortality from COVID-19 is lower. And as we see here in the title, the mortality rate close to zero can be achieved if you have vitamin D level of 50 nanograms per milliliter or more. A couple of the high points of this study. We'll scroll down. I would encourage you to go read the whole thing. There's a lot of really good info in here. But this part in the discussion, it illustrates at a time when the vaccination was not yet available, patients with sufficiently high vitamin D serum levels preceding infection were highly unlikely to suffer a fatal outcome. As well, if you look down here, this study was highlighting another study that confirmed that infections clearly correlated with the respective vitamin D levels with a cohort size close to 200,000 people. So it's well known that vitamin D is important in immune system function, and this just shows that that holds true in the case of COVID infection as well. So how do you get vitamin D? Naturally, of course, your body will synthesize vitamin D or make it when you're exposed to the UVB rays from the sun. Now, if you live far enough north or far enough south from the equator, the number of months out of the year where the UVB rays are filtered out as the light comes through the atmosphere, those UVB rays are filtered out for many months out of the year. And even if you're getting sunshine during many of those months, you won't be producing vitamin D. So an easy rule of thumb to think about is, for those of us in the United States, if you live in the latitude of San Francisco or north, then there's a good chance you're not going to be getting enough vitamin D for most of the year. In fact, quite a bit of the months out of the year. I believe it's in Sweden. One of my old teachers was talking about the R rule, and I believe this is a rule. It's a rule of thumb that they use in Sweden. I believe he was saying any month that has the letter R in it is a month that they encourage vitamin D supplementation, because you wouldn't be getting enough UVB rays. So months like September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, and then May, of course, June, July, August. Those would be the months where you could potentially produce enough vitamin D from the natural sunlight if you're getting enough sunlight. So you can see the majority of the months out of the year, supplementation is really the way to get vitamin D level. And from this study, we can see the importance of having adequate vitamin D levels. And when I got vitamin D, I'm sorry, when I came down with COVID, I had been supplementing with vitamin D. So my course of illness was relatively short. My severity of symptoms, relatively not very severe, in the sense that, I never progressed into phase 2 or phase 3 of illness. I never took any medications. I had been taking supplements and vitamins and so forth. Never took any medications during the course of illness or after. I used a lot of the natural, simple, effective, cheap, non-prescriptive therapies that we talked about in the earlier video. So if you're interested in knowing what those are, go watch the video. I hope this helps with understanding how you can get, or when you can get, the vitamin D naturally versus when you might want to talk to your doctor about supplementation. In the next video, I hope to talk about heat therapy. I've got a lot of questions over the last month or so, people asking, what can be done? What's the biggest thing you can do to help you be ready for handling a COVID infection, or help you not get COVID? And there's many things you can do. Of course, the more you do, the better positioned you're going to be. But I would say two of the most important are, well, one, what we just talked about, vitamin D, making sure your levels are adequate. And I would say the second really important one would be understanding the heat therapy and understanding how powerful that can be, and be utilizing it on a daily basis, and then know how to utilize it on a lot higher efficient level if you do have an infection. And my next video, I plan on focusing on that. Water is the biggest, I would say the most efficient delivery mechanism of heat. Not the only one, but it's very efficient, very available to people, unless you're in some other countries, potentially might not be as available. But for the most part, water is the mechanism, and there's many different ways that water can be used to deliver the heat to different areas of the body. And in the case of a SARS-CoV-2 infection, delivering that heat directly to the areas where the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein is attaching the ACE2 receptors. And we talked again about that in the earlier video. So in summary, I hope you can see the power of vitamin D. I hope you understand a little bit more about how to make sure you're getting enough. Talk to your doctor. See if they recommend getting a vitamin D level checked. It's not a bad thing to know, and then you can know if your efforts to have an optimal vitamin D level are sufficient, or if you might need to talk to your doctor about how you can change your strategy a little bit to get the vitamin D that you need to position yourself and position your immune system to be ready to fend off whatever infection it might be, whether it's SARS-CoV-2, whether it's a different one that we don't know of yet that might come down the road. So wish you good health, and until next time, try to share any information that you found helpful with others, and help and bless them as well. Take care.